My ex-husband and son, with whom I haven't spoken in 27 years, find out about my vast wealth and invite me to their place to celebrate Christmas. They want my money, but they don't suspect that I have a plan of my own. Mom, Christmas is almost here. Why not come home? Everyone's dying to see you. Ethan's voice buzzed through the phone, warm but with that practice charm, like he'd rehearsed it in front of a mirror. It had this over-the-top cheer like a car salesman pushing a lemon. This was my own son, my heart and soul, but his voice? It sounded like a stranger's, distant and unfamiliar. I was perched alone in my Seattle apartment, winter sunlight trickling through the big windows, faint and watery like a half-forgotten dream. My grip tightened on the phone. 27 years. That's how long it had been since we'd spoken. A lifetime of silence. And now, out of the blue, he calls? Not for my birthday, not for Mother's Day, not even to see if I'm alive. Just this random plea to come home. What a crock. I can't, I said, keeping my tone even, fighting to sound like I didn't care. I've got stuff to handle here. He either missed the frost in my voice or played dumb. Come on, Mom, don't be that way. Dad says if you're up for coming back, we can let bygones be bygones. And spending the holidays by yourself? That's just depressing. I let out a sharp, bitter chuckle. How kind of him. Why don't you ask your dad who kicked me out all those years ago? Who was sneaking around with that other woman? And who tore you away from me like I was some nobody? Silence hung on the line just long enough to make it awkward. Then, stumbling over his words, Ethan said, Mom, can't we just move past all that? Family's what counts now. Oh, and I heard your old place got caught up in that city redevelopment deal. Did you score some cash from it? And there it was, the real motive. So much for warm fuzzies. My voice turned cold as ice. Yeah, I got a payout. Why's that your business? He jumped in, trying to sound hurt. No, Mom, it's not like that. It's just my fiancé and I are tying the knot soon. And the housing market's brutal. We can't even pull together a down payment. If you could spot us a little, it'd mean everything. My fingers went numb like the blood just drained out. I kept my voice steady. Ethan, in 27 years, how many times have you called? Ever swung by to see if I was okay? And now what? You remember you've got a mom because my bank account's looking a bit heavier. He huffed, sounding annoyed. Mom, don't make this harder than it needs to be. I'm reaching out, all right? Help us with the house, and I promise I'll visit all the time. I took a slow, deep breath, shoving the anger down. Let me make this crystal clear, Ethan. Not one penny of that money is yours. I earned it. I survived 27 years on my own. You don't get to waltz in now and stake a claim just because you finally picked up the phone. I'm your son, he snapped, his voice spiking. How can you do this to me? My laugh came out empty like a hollow echo. So? Where were you when I needed a son? When I had nothing and no one? That word doesn't mean a thing now. You want my money? Keep wishing. Your dad. None of you are touching it. With that, I ended the call. For a second, I just sat there on the couch, feeling like I'd been punched in the chest. Then the tears came hot, fast, quiet. Not from sadness, but from pure burning rage. I grabbed a pen and scribbled "never again" on a napkin, crumpling it in my fist. Rage that they still had the gall to dangle family, like it meant something. Rage that, deep down, some stupid, hopeful part of me thought that call might have been real. And then guess who had the nerve to call next? The phone buzzed again. My hands just dry were clammy all over. Caller ID James Larson. I stared at the name for a beat, then hit answer. What do you want, James? I said, my voice sharp, though my hand trembled as I gripped the phone. His familiar drawl pulling me back to forgotten years. Lydia, don't start like that, he said, his tone dripping with that fake softness. Sure, we've been divorced forever. But we've got a son, don't we? He's getting married soon. Maybe you could pitch in, help him buy a house or something. Help him. I let out a icy laugh. James, you've got some guts. Who tossed me out of our home all those years ago? Who slammed the door in my face with our 4-year-old son in his arms? Now that I've got a little cash, I'm suddenly your ex-wife again. His voice sharpened, dropping the nice guy act. Lydia, that was ages ago. Why keep dredging it up? You're not exactly young anymore. You don't need all that money. Why not just? I cut him off. You haven't changed a bit. Still shameless. Listen up, because I'm only saying this once. You're not getting a cent, don't even dream about it. I didn't wait for his comeback. I hung up. The phone hit the couch with a soft thump. I leaned back, letting out a long, heavy sigh. Outside, the sunset painted the sky, but inside it was all storm clouds and thunder. And just like that, my mind dragged me back to that awful night. Can you imagine being left like that? 27 years ago, it was a bitter winter night, rain coming down in buckets. I was on my knees on the front steps of our old house, the cold concrete soaking through my clothes, chilling me to my core. James stood in the doorway holding little Ethan tight. Ethan was barely old enough to talk back then. James's face was blank like a stone wall. "You're worthless," he said flat, like he was reading a grocery list. "You can't even handle a kid. You're done here. Don't come back. You're not seeing him again. Give it up." My face was streaked with tears, my voice raw and trembling. "You can't do this. You're the one who cheated. Why am I the one being thrown out? Why are you taking my son?" "Cheated?" he sneered. "Look at you. Always a wreck, always complaining, never quiet. What guy could deal with that? You did this to yourself." Then he slammed the door. Left me there, in the freezing rain like some stray nobody cared to save. After that night, I tried to pick Ethan up from school, just once. But his grandparents blocked me at the gate. "You're not family anymore," his grandma hissed. "You've got no right to that boy." I didn't quit. I kept fighting, hauling myself to court after court, clinging to the slim chance I could get my son back. But hope doesn't go far when you're broke with no degree, no clout. James had fancy lawyers, connections, and old family money. In the courtroom's eyes, I was nothing but a penniless, jobless homemaker. They looked at me with pity, like I was too pathetic to be trusted with my own kid. I lost everything completely, utterly. After that, I became a ghost to my son, Ethan. I packed up and moved to Seattle, starting from scratch all alone. I scrubbed dishes in greasy diners, slung takeout bags on late-night deliveries, and mopped floors in fancy homes where the owners wouldn't even glance my way. I took any gig I could to keep my head above water. Nobody ever asked how I clawed my way through those days. Nobody gave a damn. But I made it because I had no other choice. That pain's been festering inside me like a wound for over 27 years. Every time someone says, "Mom," it stings quietly, relentlessly. I grabbed my phone and dialed Carla, my ride-or-die friend, the one who pulled me out of the darkness when I had nothing but broken dreams and a bare apartment. "You were right, Carla," I croaked, my throat raw. "I can't let them sweet-talk their way back into my life. They're not getting a single dime. Not one. Hell yeah, they're not." She fired back like she was slamming her fist on a table. "Lydia, you've been through more than anyone should. And now they think they can waltz in with fake smiles and grab what's yours? No way in hell." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Yup. I've learned the hard way. Family ties don't mean love. This time, I'm living for myself." After we hung up, I stood by the window watching Seattle's city lights spark to life, one by one. This city, once so cold and unfamiliar, full of faces I didn't know, had become my only real home. Right then I made a vow to myself. No more groveling, no more crying over the past. From now on, I'd be someone new, someone unbreakable. I lingered there, clutching a mug of cold tea, staring past the balcony railing at the skyline. Seattle's sunsets were always stunning, golden hues fading into soft pinks, but my heart felt dark, heavy. I tossed the cold tea over the balcony, watching it splatter on the pavement below. Nobody but me truly understood what it took to survive the path I'd walked for the last 27 years. Those early years after the divorce? They were my rock bottom. I had nothing, no husband, no son, not even a bed that felt like mine. It was like I'd been yanked out of my own story and dumped into a world that didn't know me, didn't want me, and sure as hell didn't care. No college degree, no resume to speak of, just raw, desperate need. So I hustled. I begged for work. I did whatever it took. Eventually, I landed a gig washing dishes at a hole-in-the-wall diner. 12 hours a day in a sweaty kitchen. My hands dunked in frigid, oily water, scrubbing endless stacks of plates while pretending I didn't hear the gossip. That's the woman whose husband threw her out. Couldn't even keep her kid. Some mom she is. I heard every word. I just acted like I didn't, Kept my eyes down and scrubbed harder, my fingers numb, my joints screaming as the cold water gnawed at my skin. That's when I learned a brutal truth. The world doesn't pause for a woman who's down. It doesn't make room. It doesn't offer a lifeline. Earlier that day, I'd laughed with a coworker over a spilled milkshake, the first time I'd smiled in weeks. One night, after locking up the diner, I was cutting through the alley out back. It was pitch black, quieter than it should have been. Out of nowhere, a group of loud men appeared, shouting insults and blocking my path. I tried to push past, heart racing, but they closed in. I hit the ground hard, my knee cracking against the pavement, pain exploding through me. For a split second, I thought that was it, my story would end there, in the dark, in the muck, forgotten. Get your filthy hands off her. A voice roared through the alley like a thunderclap. It was Carla. She lived a few doors down from me in our crummy apartment building. Older, sharp-tongued, with a laugh that turned heads. She charged in, wielding nothing but a mop and a voice that could wake the dead. Her shouts were fiercer than their fists, cutting sharper than their leers. They weren't ready for her fire, and they bolted. That night changed everything. Carla became my rock. Once, she dragged me to a dive bar, insisting I dance to a terrible jukebox song until we were both laughing like kids. She'd show up with takeout after my shifts, sit with me when I was too broken to speak. But the best part? She never pitied me. Not once. She didn't coo, "Oh, you poor thing." She said, "You don't get to quit, Lydia. You can't let them win. You hear me? You've got to live bigger than they ever thought you could." Those words, they carved themselves into my soul. I didn't cry again. I didn't crumble. I told myself, survive then thrive. So I kept washing dishes by day. At night, I signed up for night classes at a community college, coding, bookkeeping, anything I could fit in. Time was scarce, money was scarcer, but giving up? That wasn't in me anymore. 4 years later, I scored a job as an office assistant at a small import business. The pay was modest, but it meant no more dishwater, no more mop buckets. I thought maybe, just maybe, life was cutting me a break. I was wrong. It had one more twist of the knife waiting. For years, I'd kept my distance, respecting the court's ruling. But that day, I couldn't stop myself. One sunny afternoon, outside a corner market, I spotted a figure that stopped my heart cold. It was Ethan, grown now, maybe 12, a backpack dangling off one shoulder, taller than the little boy I'd held in my memories. My heart pounded so hard I thought it'd burst. I ran over, my voice trembling. "Ethan. Sweetheart, it's me. Do you know who I am?" He froze, stepping back, his eyes narrow and wary. "Who are you?" he said, stepping back, his eyes wide with confusion. "My dad said my mom's not around anymore." I stood there like I'd been hit by a bolt of lightning. "Ethan, honey, it's me," I pleaded. "You used to love my blueberry waffles every Saturday morning." His face twisted, annoyed, and he started to turn away. That's when I saw James. He was strolling over, a glossy woman on his arm, all smiles until he spotted me. His expression hardened instantly. He grabbed Ethan's shoulder. "Don't talk to her," he barked. "Come on, let's go." I didn't move. I didn't yell. I just stood there, tears streaming down my face, silent and unstoppable. My son, my own flesh and blood, was right there, and he didn't know me. Not because I'd changed, but because James had wiped me out of his life. He told Ethan I was dead. That's what it feels like to be truly erased. After that day, I unraveled. I locked myself in my tiny 120 square foot apartment and didn't come out for 4 days. Didn't eat, didn't drink, didn't even crack the blinds. I lay in the dark, drowning in waves of grief that crashed over me, relentless, unending. I'd fought tooth and nail to keep going, clinging to the hope that one day Ethan would see me and know I was his mom. But he stared right into my eyes and called me a nobody. Said I'd been dead for years. I can still picture myself slumped on the floor, back against the wall, his words looping in my head like a broken record. My mom's been gone forever. That night I came close to giving up. Not in a frantic, desperate way, but with this cold, tired resolve. I sat on the bathroom floor, staring at the tiles, wondering if anyone would notice if I just disappeared. But right then Carla burst in. She practically kicked the door down like she owned the whole building. One glance at me and she didn't bother with words. She slapped me across the face. Not hard, just sharp enough to jolt me awake. "What the hell are you thinking?" she yelled, her eyes blazing like I'd never seen. Have you lost it completely? You want to check out and hand those two jerks everything on a silver platter? That's what this is, you die, they get it all, no mess, no fight. Is that what you're after? Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I didn't cry. Somehow she'd scared the tears right out of me. Think about everything you've dragged yourself through these past 27 years, she said, her voice fierce. And now you're gonna quit? You're really gonna let them come out on top? I don't recall what I mumbled back. All I know is I grabbed her, sobbing into her arms like a scared kid. She rubbed my back, whispering, "From now on you live for you. Nobody else." That night I was born again. I stitched up every frayed piece of my soul, pulled my pain tight like a knot. I threw myself into work with a vengeance. Even basic data entry, I made sure every number was flawless. I offered to double-check reports, taught myself Excel tricks, signed up for evening courses in global commerce. 3 years later, I'd climbed from a faceless assistant to a department supervisor. My paycheck tripled. I moved into a nice apartment, one I could actually be proud of. For the first time, I walked into a tailor's shop and got a suit made just for me. I stood in front of the mirror, seeing a woman with sharp makeup and eyes like iron, barely recognizing her. But I wasn't finished. I enrolled in the University of Washington's night program, majoring in international business. Worked days, studied nights, spent weekends at free lectures, crammed among kids half my age, scribbling notes like my future depended on it. Sometimes I'd nurse a single coffee for 3 days just to power through another textbook chapter. Hard work pays off. A decade later, at 46, I stood in my own office, clutching the business license for LT Global Trade Incorporated. I'd built my own trading company from the ground up, going from scrubbing dishes to sealing million-dollar deals. Took me 21 years. The first thing I did after launching was clear my debts. The second, I bought a house all mine. No cosigner, no man's name on the deed, just Lydia Thompson. I'd never felt so proud in my life. For the first time, I started to believe maybe life was ready to throw me a bone. But then fate dropped a bombshell, and my past came creeping back. Last December, just before the holidays, my company got a notice about government compensation. It was for that rundown house I'd bought over 2 decades ago in South Seattle, the one with creaky floors and a busted furnace I'd nearly forgotten. The city hadn't. They'd taken it for a redevelopment project, and the payout was right there in bold print. $600,000. I laughed out loud when I saw it, a real disbelieving laugh. After all I'd been through, fate had finally noticed me, acknowledged my struggle. I planned to use the cash to grow my business and maybe snag a cozy lakeside cabin for retirement. But before I could even sketch out the details, the ghosts of my past slunk back in. Word of the city's redevelopment payout had spread through old neighborhood gossip, reaching James's family. Ethan called first, spinning a tale of family, unity, and holiday cheer. 2 days later, James chimed in, pulling the "We've got a son together" card, begging me to chip in for old time's sake. I listened to their slick, practiced voices and let out a low, sour chuckle, the kind you get when you've seen through every trick in the book. I hung up and shot a text to Carla. "You were right. None of them deserve a second chance. They thought I was still that soft, gullible woman they could guilt trip. But the Lydia they knew? She died years ago, in a sweaty kitchen and a shadowy alley. And my comeback? Oh, it was just getting started. I wasn't just playing defense anymore. I was ready to make them pay. I'm not reckless. I'm calculated. This time I wasn't just shielding myself. I wanted to ensure they'd never get another shot to dig into my life. So I called my friend Sarah, a top-notch estate lawyer with over 20 years of experience in Seattle. We met in her office, the smell of fresh coffee hanging in the air as she laid it out plain. "Lydia," she said, "if you write a will today and spell out that all your assets go to charity, leaving Ethan out completely, he won't have a leg to stand on if he tries to fight it later. It's your right." I nodded. That same night, with Sarah as my witness, I signed my will. Everything, my savings, my properties, my company shares, would go to the Rise Again Foundation, a nonprofit I'd founded to help women like me, survivors of domestic abuse and betrayal. As my pen scratched the final signature, I felt a mental steel door slam shut. Not on me, but on everyone who'd ever tried to take what I'd built. And I still wasn't done. Money was one thing, I wanted consequences that stung once people would see. Years in business had given me a wide network, so I started asking around quietly. It didn't take long to piece together James's life. Turns out, karma had already taken a swing. He'd tanked, gambling debts, crippling loans, the woman he'd cheated with long gone. Now he was scraping by on Social Security checks in a shabby subsidized apartment on the edge of Seattle. A fitting fall, but not enough for me. I dug deeper and tracked down the retired judge who'd handed James that custody victory all those years ago. He was living quietly now, off the radar. But fate has a funny way of balancing things. His only son. Ever wonder what it feels like to turn the tables on those who broke you? This is where it gets real. I found out the retired judge's son worked for one of my company's branches. I set up a meeting with the judge, picking a low-key diner where the only sounds were the coffee machine's hum and the occasional whoosh of cars outside. I got straight to the point, my smile cold as ice. "I know what James paid you," I said, leaning forward. "And I know how to make sure your son's career here ends fast. But if you come clean about what went down back then, I might let it slide." His face cycled through anger, fear, denial, then finally defeat. He let out a heavy sigh. "All right," he mumbled. "I took the bribe and the forged papers. It was all James's idea. He told me to play along and I did. That was everything I needed." Sarah, my lawyer friend, pulled together his confession and supporting documents into a hefty legal filing, paired with an ethics complaint to the Washington Judicial Oversight Board. The consequences hit like lightning. James's life, already a wreck, was about to burn to ash. Within days, a court summons landed at his doorstep. Picture this, me walking into court, ready to face the man who ruined me. On trial day, I strode into the courtroom in a sharp, tailored charcoal suit, every step deliberate, every detail polished. I was the woman they never thought I'd become. James shuffled in, slouched, his eyes hollow, a shadow of the man he used to be. The judge's voice was crisp, cutting through the room. "James Larson, you face charges of bribery and evidence tampering tied to a custody ruling from 27 years ago. Do you dispute these allegations?" James shook, his lips pale, eyes wide with panic. I confess," he whispered, voice breaking. "Please have mercy. I didn't have a choice back then." I stared at him, feeling nothing but cold clarity. When my turn came, I stood at the witness stand, my gaze slicing through him. 27 years ago, he threw me out of my own home," I said, my voice steady, sharp. "He stole my son. He used lies and cash to shatter my life." I paused, letting the silence hang heavy. Today, I want him to know justice has a long memory. James crumpled to his knees, sobbing. "Lydia, I was wrong. Please forgive me." I looked down at him, a faint, icy smile on my lips. "Forgive you?" I said, tipping my head. "You think that's even an option? Get comfortable with ruin. I lived it for decades." The court reversed the old ruling, clearing my name of every false claim. James got 3 years in prison, 6 years of probation, and a $250,000 fine for emotional damages. As I stepped out of the courthouse, Seattle's golden sun warmed my face. Behind me, a small crowd of reporters murmured, their cameras clicking as I walked past, my name already trending on local news. I took a deep breath, and the weight of 27 years finally lifted. I'd won using the two things they idolized, power and money. I'd crushed them completely. But there was one last loose end, and it was the hardest one yet. My story wasn't finished. There was still one chapter left, one person I owed closure. Ethan, my son. The boy I'd poured my heart into, worked myself raw for, endured endless pain for. But he wasn't that boy anymore, hadn't been for years. He'd turned into something worse than James. I hired a private investigator, not some shady guy tailing cheating husbands, but a former FBI analyst who dug into corporate scams and high-stakes lies. Over 3 months, he traced Ethan's accounts, interviewed sources, and pieced together a pattern of deceit. It didn't take long. Soon, a thick folder landed on my desk. Ethan had been preying on women. 5 women across 5 cities had wired him tens of thousands of dollars, each time falling for the same sob story. A tank business, a dying mom, a foreclosure scare. He was a con artist, a master manipulator who fed on trust like it was his harvest. Worse, he was juggling multiple lives. 2 women thought they were engaged to him. One was already sharing wedding dress pics online. I sat in my office flipping through the report, each page cutting deeper into my heart. But I didn't shed a tear. I made copies, one for each woman, sent in plain envelopes with a single handwritten note. You deserve a brighter future. I also filed an anonymous tip with the Washington Financial Crimes Unit, attaching a full trail of evidence. Within days, I got a reply, case opened. And then the storm broke. Guess who came crawling back? It was a Thursday. I just finished a client call when my phone buzzed. Ethan. I answered, my voice calm, steady. Heard you've hit some rough patches lately? His tone was different, soft, shaky, almost hopeful. Mom, he said, letting out a nervous laugh. You actually picked up. Yeah, things have been tough. I was hoping you could maybe loan me some cash? Just for a little while. I'm in a real bind. I leaned back in my chair, a cold smile spreading. Ethan, what did you think I was all these years? I said, my words measured. I reached out again and again, trying to build something with you. You slammed the door in my face every time. I was nothing to you. Now you're broke. And suddenly I'm your mom again. His voice cracked, panic seeping through. Mom, please, I know I screwed up. I swear I'll make it right. Just give me one more shot. I took a slow breath, tracing the edge of my phone with my fingertip. Too late, I said. You threw me away, Ethan. Now you get to live with what that means. I only answered to tell you one thing. Don't ever call me again. I hung up, no hesitation. And for the first time I felt nothing, no pain, no guilt, just quiet. Peace. Ethan was later charged with multiple counts of fraud. The story hit the news. His name and face splashed across every local outlet. His carefully crafted image collapsed overnight. He paid for everything he'd done. Meanwhile, my life? It was soaring to places I never dreamed. My company opened new offices in Boston and Denver, growing faster than I'd ever imagined. My company sealed multimillion-dollar deals, cementing our place as a top player in the industry. For the first time, I could pick who I worked with, saying no without a second thought. But the real healing, it didn't come from a fat bank account or shiny awards. It came from watching other women climb out of the darkness because of me. I launched the Rise Again Foundation with one clear goal. No woman should endure what I did. No one should be tossed out of her home, erased by her own child, or mocked over a pile of dishes while being called a failure. I wanted to hand them choices, to give them strength. We provided safe housing, legal support, counseling, and free career training. For so many of these women, it was the first time they realized they could decide their own path. 6 winters later, I sat on my porch in Tacoma, cradling a mug of hot spice cider. A rare Washington snow dusted the hills in the distance, glowing faintly under the sunset. I was wrapped in a soft ivory shawl, my old tabby cat sprawled lazily at my feet, soaking up the last rays. A letter sat on the table beside me, just dropped off by my assistant. It was from the Seattle Community Impact Council, naming me their Humanitarian of the Year. At the award ceremony, I stood under the stage lights, gazing out at the crowd, over 100 women who'd once been ignored, silenced, discarded. My eyes welled up, tears spilling over. I'd always known my success wasn't just about escaping my own hell. It was about reaching back to lift someone else up. It was about showing those women what I'd learned. You can choose not to forgive, and you can also choose to start fresh. That afternoon, sunlight streamed through my office's tall windows as I reviewed plans for a new women's shelter. My housekeeper stepped in quietly. Miss Thompson, she said, her voice low. There's a call for you. I glanced at my phone and the name on the screen stopped me cold. One I deleted more times than I could count, yet it still felt familiar. Still made my breath hitch. Ethan. I hesitated, then hit answer. Mom. His voice was shaky, fragile, like it had crossed a long road to reach me. Hey, sweetheart, I said softly, my tone gentle but guarded. Mom, I know I don't deserve this, he said, his words stumbling. I've done a lot of thinking in prison these past years. I regret it all. Every lie, every hurt I caused you. I'm out now, working a small retail job. It's nothing big, but I'm trying. Could we meet? Just once. I shut my eyes, taking a slow breath. I didn't know what to say, didn't even know what I felt. I didn't reply. I just ended the call and sat there silent on my couch. That night sleep wouldn't come. Even with the heavy curtains drawn, I couldn't silence the echo in my head. Mom, it's me. Ethan's voice was older, heavier, each word carrying a guilt that sounded real. For the first time in years, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling until dawn's light crept across my sheets. I didn't call him back. Instead, I sat down and wrote a letter, each word careful, measured, like my heart still needed a shield. It read, "Ethan, if you want a chance, sit down and face me with the truth. Not for you, not even for me, but because someone has to show you what it means to own your actions. I'll be at the Cedar Lane Cafe near my place. Friday, 1 p.m. sharp. Don't be late. Your mother, Lydia." The day arrived and I was ready but nervous. Here's how it went down. I chose a vibrant outfit on purpose. A coral wool coat Carla had gifted me for my last birthday. "Enough with the muted tones of your old life," she'd said. "No more shadows." The Cedar Lane Cafe was a cozy, no-frills spot, worn tables, chairs that squeaked if you shifted too much, but always quiet, the air clean. I loved that about it. I got there 20 minutes early, ordered a black coffee, no cream, and set it across from me for him. At exactly 1 p.m. he walked in. It took a second to recognize him. His hair was short, his frame leaner, sharper. His jacket was worn, faded from too many washes, and his hands were chapped like he'd been hauling boxes without gloves. Our eyes met briefly, then he approached. He didn't sit right away, just stood there, looking smaller than I'd seen him since he was 11, caught fibbing about a spilled juice stain. "Careful," I said, nodding at the coffee. He murmured a thanks and eased into the chair. For a few minutes we didn't speak. The silence felt heavy like a thick fog. I could hear my own pulse, steady, calm. He broke the quiet first. "Mom, I've really changed," he said, his voice low, rough. "I spent years in prison thinking, writing letters I was too scared to send." I nodded, staying silent. "I've got a job now, sales entry-level, but I'm working hard. I haven't lied, haven't taken a dime that wasn't mine." I didn't say a word, just tapped my finger lightly on my mug. A soft, even rhythm. "I know I was terrible," he went on. "I lied to you, to everyone. But I want to be someone you'd be proud of." I finally looked up. His eyes were glassy, blinking fast. "Ethan," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "The woman you're looking at? It took 27 years to build her. You don't erase that with a few kind words and a coffee." He bit his lip, not arguing. I sighed, softening just a touch. "I'm not here to forgive you. I'm here to see if you're ready to own every single thing you've done." He nodded, his eyes red. I reached into my bag and pulled out a leather-bound journal, sliding it across the table. "If you mean it, right?" I said. "Every week send me something. A memory, a thought. No fluff. No excuses. Just the truth, raw." His hands shook as he took the journal, then he looked at me. For the first time I saw a spark in his eyes, faint but real. I didn't make him any promises. But in that moment I felt it. A single step toward something new. Not the past we'd lost, but a bridge to something we might build. I stood to leave. Can you imagine sitting across from the son who once called you a stranger? This is where things get raw. Ethan stood as I did, and as I started to walk away, he murmured, "Thank you." I didn't turn around, but deep down I knew he'd show up again. Not chasing forgiveness, but trying at last to be someone a mom could recognize. A week later, just as the sun dipped low, Ethan arrived right on time at my front porch, clutching that journal. His clothes were still simple, but he looked sharper, hair neatly trimmed, shirt pressed. There was a quiet resolve in his eyes, cautious but steady. I didn't ask him inside. I just reached for the journal, his hands shaking slightly as he handed it over. I didn't flip it open then, just gave a small nod. "If you want to keep writing," I said, "we can set another time." "I'd like that," he answered, then turned and left. I stood on the porch watching him go. My chest didn't lighten with relief, but it wasn't the old rage either. Just a heavy feeling I couldn't quite pin down. Maybe weariness, the kind that lingers when something shattered starts to mend. A family once ripped apart doesn't heal with one. I'm trying. That night I read his words, and they hit me hard. Later, alone, I opened the journal. Ethan wrote about the first time he heard, "Your mom's dead." He was just a kid, sitting at the dinner table when James, nursing a whiskey, tossed it out like it was small talk. Ethan didn't cry, he just believed it, plain and simple. He wrote about 4th grade, how a strange woman he didn't know appeared at the school gate, pressing a stuffed bear into his hands. He said he froze, bolted home, only to face a harsh scolding. James called her a dangerous woman, warned him never to speak to her again. From then on, Ethan wrote, a weird knot grew inside him, fear, confusion, and a quiet ache for something he couldn't name. He didn't make excuses, just laid it out, clumsy but real, about growing up wrapped in lies, how love for a mom he barely recalled turned into something cold, distant. When I closed the journal, I couldn't quite label the emotion it stirred. Not happiness, not grief, but something gentler like understanding. For the first time, I saw how he'd been pulled away from me step by step. I set the journal on the kitchen table, leaving the light on. Sleep didn't come easy that night, but it was better than before. The second time we met, it was a Sunday afternoon. Ethan suggested a bench outside the Central Library in downtown Tacoma. The sun was bright, the streets calm. I brought a thermos of iced mint tea. He carried a book on negotiation tactics. Mom, he said as we sat, I'm not expecting you to trust me overnight. I just want to become someone you might someday believe in. I nodded, then laid out the rules. No money, no loans, no crashing at my place, I said. This isn't about punishing you. It's about keeping us both safe, giving us room to breathe. He nodded. I understand. I added, I'll read what you write, but don't expect me to always reply. He gave a small smile. That's more than I've gotten in 20 years. We talked for nearly 3 hours that day about his job, the pushy customers, the tough manager. He shared how he drags himself out of bed each morning, splashes water on his face, and jots in his journal for 15 minutes. He said he ends every night by noting 3 things he did right, even if it's just showing up to work on time or skipping fast food when he's starving. Sounds like you're finally listening to yourself, I said. He grinned. Yeah, I'm starting to hear my own voice. In that moment, a warmth bloomed in my chest. Not full-on joy, but a spark of trust, the kind that creeps in slowly, like dew melting on a chilly morning. I didn't say it, but as I walked home, I caught myself looking forward to the next meeting. And then I did something I hadn't in years, cooked a real dinner. Here's how it went. Time flew, and before I knew it, our next meeting rolled around. That evening, I decided to cook, something I hadn't done in ages. I made grilled halibut, roasted green beans, and a small batch of butternut squash soup. It wasn't that I'd forgotten how to cook. I just hadn't felt there was anyone worth the effort. I swapped out the tablecloth for a rich teal one, set out plain white plates, and let the soft glow of the overhead lights warm the room. It felt peaceful, quiet. At 6 p.m. sharp, the doorbell chimed. I wiped my hands and opened the door. Ethan stood there holding a bunch of daisies, looking nervous. I remembered you liked daisies, he said. Not sure if you still do. I took the flowers, nodded. Thanks. No chit-chat, no big gestures, just a simple welcome. I told him to kick off his shoes and come in. He stepped inside carefully, still clutching that journal like it was his anchor. His movements stiff, like he was afraid to break something. This is a dining room, not a law office, I said. Loosen up. He let out a small, nervous laugh and sat down. As I served the food, he said, This smells incredible. That tablecloth looks great. His compliments were a bit too eager, like he was grasping for words. We started eating, and after a spoonful of soup, he paused. I haven't had a home-cooked meal in forever, he said quietly. Me neither, I replied, just as soft. The air grew heavy for a moment, but I shifted gears, telling him about a job training program I'd checked out for women in need. Ethan listened, asked smart questions about how it ran, like he wanted to contribute something useful. Halfway through dinner, he stopped, looked at me and said, Mom, can I ask you something? I nodded. Did you really come to see me when I was a kid? At school. I set my fork down carefully. I did, I said. So many times. I'd stand by the gate, watching you race out of class, holding your dad's hand, climbing into his car. You never looked my way. He dropped his gaze, silent for a long beat. Dad said you didn't want me, he murmured. I know now, he never told me you showed up. My voice stayed calm, the memories old enough to speak without breaking. He told me you were unstable, that you died, that you stole our money and ran. He fed me a dozen different stories about you. His words were barely audible. I didn't fill the silence, just let him speak what needed saying. I believed him for years, he said. But when I got older, I started wondering. If you were so awful, why did I get a birthday card every year? I gave a faint, weary smile. Ever wonder what it's like to see someone you thought was lost start to find their way back? I figured you never even opened those cards. I kept a few, Ethan admitted, his voice low. Hid them, didn't want anyone to know. I think I was too afraid to face the truth. It was easier to believe you were the villain than to admit I'd been fed lies my whole life. I nodded slowly. I get it. He didn't say more, just went back to his meal, but something had changed. His shoulders relaxed, his movements looser, like a thin wall between us had started to crumble. After dinner, I steeped some chamomile tea. Ethan said the scent took him back to when he was a sick kid, maybe 6, burning up with a fever. It's my only clear memory of you, he said. You gave me tea, bitter but kinda sweet. You were in a blue sweater, sitting by my bed, cooling my medicine with your breath. I hadn't expected him to remember that. One fleeting moment I'd slipped in to care for him while James was away, the last time I got close before they shut me out. We sat on the couch, quiet, sipping our tea. Outside, night had settled in, streetlights casting soft glows across the living room. For the first time in years, this little house of mine felt like a home again. As Ethan got up to leave, I walked him to the door. He paused like he wanted to say more. I've been thinking about doing something, he said. Not just work, something that helps people. I don't know if I'll be any good, but I want to give it a shot. I didn't reply right away. Then I said, if you're for real, look into Rise again. It's not flawless, but it's worth your time. He didn't bring it up again and I didn't push. Then, a surprise landed in my inbox. On Thursday, I opened a standard email from one of the Foundation's program managers. Just a rundown of new volunteers and schedule changes. I skimmed it distractedly, then stopped cold. Ethan Thompson. Completed volunteer orientation. Assisting with intake and client support. I stared at the screen, then broke into a small smile. He hadn't said a word to me. That was exactly what I'd hoped. He'd taken the leap himself, not waiting for my nudge, not because I paved the way, but because he chose to walk it alone. The next morning, I swung by the Foundation's office, acting like it was a routine visit. I slipped into the training room, where Ethan was guiding 4 new female volunteers through the intake process. His gestures were a bit awkward, but his voice was steady, focused, jotting notes and checking if they followed. When he noticed me, his eyes flickered with surprise, but no nerves, just a quick nod before he dove back in. I sat in the back, listening for a bit. After he finished, sending the women off with warm farewells, he walked over and sat beside me. You knew I'd be here? He asked. Not until today, I said, smiling. But you not telling me? That shows me you wanted this for yourself. He ducked his head, a shy grin spreading. In that grin, I saw something I hadn't in ages, confidence, hard-earned, not borrowed. I just didn't want you worrying about me anymore, he said. I nodded. Over the next few weeks, I saw him transform, small steps but real ones. When Ethan came over for dinner, he started bringing recipes to try. Simple things like garlic roasted potatoes or a lemon herb chicken. He didn't just sit there waiting to be fed anymore. He pitched in, scrubbing dishes, wiping down the counter without me saying a word. He began talking about the future. Not in hazy someday terms, but with solid plans. I'm thinking about a leadership course, he said one night, stirring a pot of soup. Could help if the Foundation grows its programs. Then he signed up for a job placement project for domestic abuse survivors, handling paperwork and calling local shelters. One afternoon, the program lead pulled me aside. Ethan spent 3 hours talking to a 52-year-old woman in the program, she said. She broke down, said she'd never had a man just sit and hear her whole story. Ethan didn't mention it to me. That evening, he just showed up, set his journal on the table and said, "No story this week. Just 3 names and 3 things they shared." I opened the journal. The first line read, "You're tougher than you know." We skipped dinner that night, just drank tea instead. At one point, he looked up and asked, "Mom, how did you make it through those early days?" I paused, then said, "I didn't make it through. I tripped and stumbled every step." He nodded slowly. I get it. I could tell he wasn't just saying it, he felt it. Not pity, but a shared understanding. Living isn't about dodging pain. It's about moving forward with it. As he got up to leave, he hesitated, then stepped in and hugged me. Not like a kid seeking comfort, but like a man choosing to let his guard down. I hugged him back, gave his shoulder a light pat. "Don't be late for work tomorrow," I said with a grin. He laughed. "I won't let you down." When the door shut, I stood in the quiet hallway, and in that stillness I realized life was getting better. Then Ethan surprised me again, with a gesture I never saw coming. That afternoon the sun was warm and golden. Ethan came over for lunch, same as usual, but this time he had something new. "I reached out to a care home in Olympia," he said, hanging his jacket on the chair. "They've got a Mother's Day volunteer program. I heard someone you know lives there. You mentioned her once, I think." I froze, caught off guard. "Maria?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah. You said she was the only one you could really open up to back when things were toughest." A soft memory stirred. Maria, my old neighbor from those grim years in the low-rent apartments. She was a bold, tell-it-like-it-is woman, always cooking spicy stew and laughing loud enough to shake the walls. Fierce, honest, and loyal, she'd been my lifeline until illness took her to Olympia, and we lost touch. That day, Ethan and I drove 3 hours to the care home. We found Maria in the garden, basking in the sun by a stone wall. Her face was thinner, but her grin lit up like a spark when she saw me. She grabbed my hand with that same fierce grip I remembered. "You must be the kid," she said, eyeing Ethan with a squint. "The one who wouldn't open the gate while your mom stood crying outside. I wanted to knock your dad's teeth out back then." Ethan gave a sheepish chuckle but held her gaze. "I know I messed up a lot," he said quietly. Maria raised an eyebrow. "So you gonna make it right?" He looked her square in the eye and nodded. "Can you imagine finding peace with someone who once broke your heart?" "I'm going to try," Ethan said, his voice steady. I looked at them, Maria my rock when I had nothing, and Ethan, once the deepest scar I carried. Now they sat on either side of me in that care home garden. We spent the afternoon there, talking, chuckling, mostly soaking in Maria's unstoppable sass and stories. On the drive back, the sun sank low, painting the sky in soft golds. Ethan and I rode in silence for a while, not awkward, just heavy with meaning. As we pulled into my driveway, he spoke up. "Mom," he said, "was there ever a time you wanted to wipe me out of your life for good?" I didn't answer right away. "There was," I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. He turned to me, his expression calm but searching. "It was when you were 18, I continued. "The last time I stood outside your house, you peeked at me through the window, then shut the blinds." I gazed out at the fading amber sky. "I went home, lay on my bed, and thought maybe it was time to let you go, to erase you from my heart." "Why didn't you?" he asked, his voice soft. "Because I couldn't," I murmured. The car sat still in the driveway, neither of us moving to get out. "You know," I added, "right before you closed those blinds, you paused for a split second. I never forgot that moment." He lowered his head, his voice rough. "In that split second, I was wondering if you'd walk away." I met his eyes. "I never walked away. I just stood still, waiting for you to turn back." That night, we didn't eat dinner or say formal goodbyes. He just reached over, took my hand, and held it, a quiet, simple gesture. Then he drove off. I stood in the doorway, watching his taillights fade down the street. For the first time, the weight of all those years, the pain, the rage, the endless waiting, lifted softly without a sound. A few weeks later, Ethan surprised me again. Ethan invited me to the Rise Again Foundation's annual fundraiser. He stood among the other volunteer leaders, dressed in a navy suit. No nervous grin or forced charm, just a calm confidence. For the first time, I didn't see someone trying to prove they were good. I saw someone becoming whole. He didn't say much, but when he spoke about how rebuilding trust is the toughest but most rewarding path, I noticed a woman in the audience nod quietly, and my eyes welled up with tears. After the event, we strolled home together. He draped his suit jacket over his arm and said, "I was nervous up there, but it didn't feel like I was speaking just for myself." "I know," I replied, my voice warm. "You were speaking for a lot of moms and a lot of sons out there." A breeze kicked up, and he offered me his jacket. I shook my head, smiling. "Keep it, I'm fine." He nodded, and we kept walking. The moonlight spilled across the sidewalk in silvery streaks, and we moved side by side, like two people who finally understood the map of each other's hearts. The regret, the silence, the distance, they were still there, but they no longer shaped who we were. Ethan wasn't my shame or my guilt anymore. He was simply my son. And I could finally say with pride and peace, I am his mother. This reunion, long overdue, was one we both showed up for fully, hearts open. As we parted, I slipped a photo into his pocket. One of us from years ago, laughing at a park. Keep it, I said. That's who we're building from. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. What would you do in Lydia's shoes? Write about it in the comments. We also recommend that you listen to the story of Susan, a woman who gave her granddaughter a painting she had painted herself, and her granddaughter publicly called it worthless. The way Susan responded shocked everyone. Thank you for watching.